Announcements that I want to make, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me. A lot of stuff has been happening over the course of the last little while, and I just want to remind you that next week, 9:30, regular liturgy, we'll celebrate the way we've been worshiping together for quite a while now, and just relax into it and do it for the sheer joy of it. It'll be a beautiful Labor Day weekend worship service, 9:30 in the morning. We'll go the following week to 10:45, and then we will go on for homecoming on September 16th, so be prepared to do potluck afterwards. Now, I want to draw your attention to some of the things that we've been looking at in terms of program for the coming autumn season, and I'm going to go through these quite quickly. You're going to receive emails this week with more information. But I think it's important that we begin to think in these directions, and we also, the planning team and council, need a little bit more input from people in the congregation. It's why we're recording this. We'll send the videotape out to everyone in the congregation so that they can hear some of the questions that are going to come from the leadership to the whole congregation that we're hoping for some responses to. So in addition to our Sunday gatherings for familiar liturgy, we will also return to our adult education piece. We're going to look at a book by Brian McLaren, The Great Spiritual Migration. I think it's a wonderful articulation of a lot of the stuff we've been talking about this summer. Some folks in leadership are reading this book already in advance. I have more copies in the office if you would like to borrow a copy to read. But we're going to do adult education on that. Brian McLaren has developed a piece that he calls Way of Life. And so that's going to be our beginning stab at this School of Love idea for adult education on Sunday mornings, and that begins on September 16th. Now, in terms of the program we're adding for the fall, remember we are hoping to be able to double participation on a weekly basis on various different events. Now, not everybody's going to come to church on Sunday mornings, and not everybody's going to want to come to adult education, so we're supplementing it with more program. We're going to begin a program that we're calling Morning Brew, and we're playing on the word brew and brood. So brood in that we're an interesting brood of people, and brood when you contemplate and you think about things. So we're going to do Morning Brew over tea and coffee, really finely brewed tea and coffee. We'll challenge ourselves on that one. And we are going to do the Painting the Stars program. So that's going to begin, now these dates are tentative, around October the 18th. We're hoping for that to be on a Thursday. That's a Thursday morning. The big program that we're hoping to launch on a Tuesday night, around about October 16th, is also called Broodings, but the brood will change to gathering over a pint to contemplate life's big questions. And some of the questions are detailed there. You have an idea of what the program will be. You'll be getting this by email so you can take a closer look at it. Now, here's the conundrum. We had a wonderful team of people go and look at all of the locations in the immediate area that might be suitable for the broodings, and this was before we decided on over a pint. So it could have been meeting for dinner in a restaurant. It could have been meeting for coffee in a meeting room. But when the list of locations came through, one of the locations rose to the top. And it's kind of funny, actually. The location that rose to the top was the upper room at the Crow's Nest. Partly because a lot of the rooms were very expensive, partly because of the times that they were available. Some places required applications about our content. Some places don't allow religious groups. So the Crow's Nest rose to the top.
And also we're familiar with it.
Yeah, we're very familiar with it. It has worked for us in the past. Daphne was our intrepid negotiator, and unfortunately, well actually fortunately, this is something to celebrate. Newmarket is experiencing a resurgence, and the Crow's Nest in the past had been willing to dedicate their upper room to us on a Monday night because we brought customers on a night when they normally didn't have customers. That's no longer the case. They have customers every day, every night. It's a huge resurgence in Newmarket. Most of the pubs are experiencing the same thing. So no one's willing to dedicate their space because a group might want to come in there and spend $1,000 in an evening. Well, we're just there to buy maybe one beer each, like a glass of wine possibly. That's just, and they bring in staff, or they did before. They said, we'll let you have the room, but we could cancel it within a day's notice. Well, if we've promoted this to people outside of our community, that's not going to work. So we were in this huge conundrum. We were going back, re-looking at some of the other locations. In the meantime, I got in touch with a colleague of mine in Texas who's running a progressive Christian church. They went from being one of those conservative fundamentalist churches to being a progressive Christian church, got themselves on the cover of Time magazine for doing so. Very, very popular, big church, progressive Christian church. And I explained the problem that we're having on finding a location. And he said, things are really strange in Canada. He said, I've never heard of anything like this. Now, before, we wanted an outside location because we felt it was difficult for people to come into a church building. And so the thinking was, meet in a pub. And he said, don't you know progressives only meet in pubs because they can't afford their own building? And once they become successful, they get a building. You own your building. There's no mortgage on it. You don't have to pay rent. Why aren't you doing it in your building? And sometimes you have to talk to somebody who's totally outside, because the way we thought about this a decade ago, when Pastor Tom and I were doing the research, all the recommendations were, now some of you went to Aurora to hear Phyllis Tickle speak quite a few years ago now. I think it's almost 10 years ago now, my goodness. I think it was 2008. And one of the things Phyllis Tickle said is progressive groups are really great. They don't want to have a church building. They don't want to be institutionalized. And then they have a little bit of success. And the first thing they do is they go to an institution like a church and say, can we have space in your building for free? Because we can't afford it. So it seems to me that the notion of it being a church is somewhat problematic for some people. And I was having conversation with my colleague in Texas, and he said, what's wrong with your church? Is it a really old church building? Does it have pews that are stuck on the floor? Does it outside look really uninviting? Is it not accessible? And each time I gave him the answer, he said, is this a Canadian thing? He said, they just moved into a new building. It's an old church. They were so successful that they had to move out of their gymnasium, and they're now moving into an old church that was bought by developers, and the developers part of their business plan was to have a church meeting there on a Sunday morning. And the rest of the time they do banquets and functions and things like that. The point is, it's an old, traditional-looking church building. He said, you have a multi-purpose room. You need to use it. He said, what is the hitch? And then he looked at our name and he went, Holy Cross Lutheran Church. Now I get it. He said, it's simple. I wish I could claim this idea for myself because I think it is simple, it's beautiful. Rebrand the building. Now notice I'm not saying change the name of the congregation. We might do that down the road, but that's a long process, takes a lot of energy, and I don't think we're there yet. So how about we rebrand the building? Okay? Now we know that Armitage Village Nursery meets at this center to do their thing. Now the sign is over there behind the mist. That happens. But what if Holy Cross met at this center? What if we rebranded something? Now we came up, I sent this email out to the leadership team, and I just threw out a bunch of ideas for people to react to, and I was preparing this content at the same time. So you can see why my suggestions were like this, but I just wanted to get the oil in the process here. So I said, what about the Beloving Center? The Center for Living Love. The Center for Being Love. Embodying Love Center. Living Love Learning Center. I think that was you, Daphne. So just imagine this. Think about come on down to the blankety blank center for broodings, gathering over a pint to contemplate life's big questions. Join us at the blankety blank center for morning brew, gathering over a mug of lovingly brewed coffee or tea. Join us at the blankety blank center on Sunday morning for adult education as we explore the task of becoming the most loving version of ourselves. Join us at the blankety blank center on Sunday morning as we gather together to celebrate a new way of being in the world. Join us at the blankety blank center for a movie. Join us at the blankety blank center for music, a concert, a dance, you name it. The center, the house, the assembly hall, whatever this building is, we rebrand it. We put a new name, new sign. We need a new sign. The sign has been here for, how long have we been in this building? I'm coming up on 20 years in March. So that 20 years that we've been in this building.
I'm saying it's closer to 25 years.
No, I'm just talking about the sign.
That's what she's saying.
Yeah.
The sign isn't...
Because I'm the one who got the sign initially, and it's close to 25 years.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. But, because the sign was broken a few years after I got here, and that's a new one. Yeah. So what I'm saying is it's only nearly a 20-year-old sign, and physically it has to be replaced no matter what happens. We can have a sign that says the whatever center, Holy Cross Lutheran Church meets at the such and such center. We don't have to change the name of the church yet. I know there are some people who want to change the name of the church. Trust me, that will take a long time. We don't have time. We have to get this program launched in October. We can change the name of this building. The church is not a building, right? So what has come in since then via email from various leaders is the Learning to Live Love Center, Learning to Live Love Meeting Place for Learning to Live Love, Center for Living Life Today, Open Hearts or Open Hands, Open Hearts, just simply that. Living the Way Meeting Place, Aspiration House of Learning, just simply Aspiration House, Aspiration Center, or Aspiration Learning Center, Aspiration Meeting Place. Journey, I think that was your thought, Andrew. Gathering place, simple, gathering place. Here's what I need you to know. It needs to be short, really short, and it needs to be memorable, and it needs to say a little something about the community, but it doesn't need to carry the message for the community, because the community is going to be doing different activities here, which will have the message piece in it, right? Morning brew will happen, broodings will happen, gathering on Sunday mornings will happen. Gathering on Sunday mornings, I'm using that expression mindful of what Michael Moore talked about when he said, why are you using the term worship? What does that mean? And do we need to use that term anymore? So what I'm suggesting is a fast turnaround on this. And you know how they say, how long does it take the church to change? That's ridiculous. The church doesn't change. We do. We change. And if we want to launch this program in October, we'll need to have figured this out and ordered a new sign for this building by then. So what I'm suggesting is, think about it. Is it going to be a center? Is it going to be a house, an assembly hall, whatever? Think about it a little bit and send your ideas. Email them to me. I'll put them on the chain with the church council and the program planning team. When we come back on homecoming, or we have another meeting scheduled later for some financial matters that we have to take up, we'll have a congregational vote about what the name is going to be. And we'll probably give you one or two options, or maybe one option and say yes or no, vote it up or down. But what I'm suggesting is we need more input than just the leadership team and the council. So if you have a brilliant idea, keep it short. I guarantee you, if it has more than 3 words in it, it's probably not going to make the list. Okay? Just think of it, we're paying by the letter on the sign. But keep it short and keep it direct, and remember, we're not changing the name of the congregation. We're just rebranding the building. So when we advertise broodings, it will be happening at the such and such center. And people will, over time, learn where the such and such center is. Okay? or the such and such house, or the such and such assembly. Questions?